Welcome to the Spawn Chunks. This is episode number 5 for Monday, September 3rd, 2018. My name is Johnny, but Minecraft folks might know me as Pixlriffs, and joining me, as always, is Joel Duggan. How are you doing today, Joel?
I am doing fantastic, my friend. It is a lovely, lovely summer day in September. Where the heck did summer go?
I know.
But I'm quite enjoying myself today.
Excellent stuff. So, here we are to talk about Minecraft once again, and we may as well start off with a quick look at what's been going on with our weeks. Have you had much time to dive into Minecraft this week, Joel?
I have not. I had a bunch of end of the month, I guess, bookkeeping and stuff to do with my publishing company and some other stuff. So I was not able to play as often as I wanted to. Or I guess I should say I was not able to play in large chunks. Like I had like half an hour here at the end of the day or whatever, where I just kind of had that itch to just kind of go in and maybe mine a little bit or do some things.
De-stress.
So what I just
de-stress
yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
precisely. So what I decided to do, stuff that doesn't make good video content, stuff that isn't really great on streams. I was going around and just kind of fixing a bunch of farms and a bunch of elevators and mines and things like that were using the old, what do we call it? The block glitch, where you use a dropper to put an item into a transparent block and then it kind of glitches to the surface.
People always just used to call them item elevators because there wasn't really any better way of doing it other than redstone and dropper pipes, I guess. But I know what you mean. Those kind of like the ones we were talking about in a previous episode, the plus-shaped cross-section.
Yeah, exactly.
Glitch the items to the top elevators, yeah.
So now that we have bubble elevators, which are obviously in-game mechanics meant to be there, work more reliably, are faster. I went around to a couple of different places, including my beacon mine, which those are the kind of things that you want those to be reliable. Like I don't want my diamond or redstone or lapis blocks glitching out the side by accident. And if you've got a hole in it and there's water that's not working, it just flat out doesn't work. There's no ifs. It's like, nope, it's a 0-1 game. So I went around and I fixed a couple of those. And one of the things that I've discovered, kind of a happy accident, which will tie into our discussion later, is that with the block glitch version, items really did clump up. So you'd have stacks of like 16, 32, 40 something clumped up and going through your water streams after they've gone up this elevator. And with water streams, once an item is ejected into a bubble stream, not a water stream, but a bubble column, it is gone, and it is gone quickly.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed is that items, when they're going around corners or bunching up, at most I get a stack of maybe 4 items. So when you're dealing with a large amount of items, say from like a stone mine, you got cobble and smooth stone and dirt, and you're putting stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff into your item sorter in your storage system, it's nice that the filters don't get overloaded because there's only ever 2 items going over the top of the filter at a time. It's going by quickly, but it's still not faster than the hopper can shoot out the items underneath. So I found that my system was working better with the new bubble column. So kind of a tip of the hat to people that are out there looking at the change. Like it's a pain. It is a lot of work to go and fix all of your old stuff if you're on an old world, but man, is it worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good that that's also become a sort of quality of life change in other areas than just easy item transportation.
Yeah.
That's fun. So
what about you? What did you get up to?
This week I made what I've been told jokingly that I'm not allowed to call a tree farm because it doesn't do the farming for me. There are a few designs out there that will actually kind of harvest trees for you. A lot of them use explosions, so like TNT and withers and ghast fireballs and stuff like that. What I made was a tree pusher.
Oh.
So I've figured out a redstone mechanism, and this is not based on anybody's design. Once again, my continued journey to better myself by figuring out redstone stuff by myself instead of looking up people's tutorials. I sort of feel like I'm learning redstone the way people used to do things, like I'm a few steps behind in terms of like the bleeding edge of redstone. But I've developed this contraption that when you grow a birch tree, it sends a redstone signal through the bottom of the birch tree. So like once the sapling is there, it can't conduct any redstone, but when it turns into a log, it can. And that activates a circuit which pushes it along like a conveyor belt. And what it eventually does is thread all of this birch around, and it's specifically birch right now. I do plan on making a different type of tree farm later, but it just harvests it all into, it just sections it all into a big block that I can then farm all at once instead of having to grow something and then stop to farm it and then plant a few more saplings and then grow those. And it means a lot of bone meal, it means a lot of birch saplings, but I've managed to get it so I can have maybe 7 stacks of birch at once if I fill this thing up, and then I can use that to make strip logs. So instead of, running around stripping individual trees and then cutting off the leaves and stripping off the 2 blocks you can't reach because leaves are covering them, it pushes them all out of the way of the leaves, and I just run around with the right mouse button held down with my axe in hand, stripping all the logs. Because stripped birch, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, is one of my favorite new blocks, and I want to use it a whole lot, and I don't really want to use the regular birch logs. So I put it all in this giant block, strip all of the bark off of it, and then harvest it, and it sits in my storage system perfectly.
Nice.
I'm quite happy with it. I also had to dress it up in some way because one of my other missions for this season of Decidedly Vanilla is to make the redstone contraptions I'm making actually look good, look like they're part of the city that I'm building. So I built this kind of Art Deco inspired tower skyscraper sort of thing over the top of it, just because builds, because I kind of had to. And I was pretty happy with how that came out. Sort of sandstone structure, partially based on one of my one chunk designs. There's a one chunk kind of Art Deco skyscraper that I built a while ago. And
I recall that, yes.
Yeah, it's got sandstone and dark prismarine and stuff in it, and it's a really nice combination, and I think it looks quite good. It still needs to settle in a little bit, still needs a little bit of dressing up around it, maybe a couple of custom trees and stuff like that, but I'm pretty happy with it.
Nice. That's going to be a challenge. I've never done modern skyscraper building factory type stuff. All of my builds have been either medieval-esque or old world, log cabins, stone houses, things like that. We have a couple of modern builds on the server, but they're also hanging on a cliff, or kind of the location was chosen very carefully. So we've not had to really kind of take something like a 100-block tall, skyscraper or really large factory and then try to make it look like it's part of the world.
Yeah.
Because we've never done that. And one of the things that I find myself when I'm looking for inspiration, I'm going through Google Images for fancy Minecraft castle. And you go and you look and it's like, well, wait a minute. This is a really cool castle, but there is zero effort, outside of the helicopter flying overhead to mesh it into the landscape. And you're like, well, that's a talent. It's a really pretty castle, but boy, talk about just plunking it down in the middle of some world.
You've absolutely got to give those builds context, and that's why I started this city that I'm building on a mushroom island, because in the middle of spawn, next to everybody's lovely kind of Mediterranean Tuscan style builds, it was just going to look completely out of place. So when I fixed my idea on I want to build a city here, I absolutely had to set it somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and that's why I picked out that island. And that's going pretty well. I've got 3 large builds there now, so it's definitely feeling like it's taking the shape of a city. Just got to do the little extra contextual work to get it all going. So cool. Let's talk about the week's news, because for once, since we started this podcast, we've had snapshots basically every week. This time we don't. This time we have not had any mention of in-development versions of Minecraft this week, as far as I can tell, and that is probably because the developers are gearing up for what they're going to present at Minecon Earth, which is coming up at the end of this month. There is a handy article that you can go and see a little bit more information about Minecon Earth over at minecraft.net. In their news section. We'll link that in the show notes. And there are watch parties happening in various places. Having been to a Minecon watch party, technically speaking, last year, it's actually a lot of fun. And a lot of these are in fairly small locations, they're in kind of Microsoft stores and stuff like that. So,
which to me does not sound fun, by the way.
Not necessarily the kind of place you'd consider hosting a party. But the thing I went to last year was more of it was a watch party, but there was also a kind of minigame PvP tournament thing happening, and there were booths from a bunch of people
It looked like a convention, it looked like a small Comic-Con, but Minecraft focused.
Yeah, and it definitely pales in comparison to the Minecons they've had in previous years. But of course, their message lately is that Minecraft has become so big that they want to make sure they can include everybody, and so they're presenting all of the Minecon kind of news stuff as a live stream that's going to be happening right at the end of September. And yeah, the date and details of that will be on the website. There's a countdown clock going for when that's going to be. And again, because just setting a time for it doesn't really make sense when you've got people all over the world watching. We were talking about this a little bit before the show, and yeah, it seems kind of strange to be like, it's 12 Eastern in the US when the main Mojang office, where the kind of core developers for the Java version at least are based in Stockholm, where it's 6 hours ahead, and they're kind of encouraging global participation. So having a countdown clock to it makes a little bit more sense, because then you can more easily figure out when it's going to happen in your time zone.
A lot of times you'd think they would at least put out like a UTC or like an international time zone location, but it is 12 Eastern for anybody in North America. It's 12 p.m. Eastern on September 29th is when Minecon is going to happen. I didn't get a chance to mention this to you before the show, but if we can, it would be kind of cool to watch it together.
Yeah, we should see what we can do about that. I don't know what the policy is for kind of like streaming stuff like that and restreaming it and so forth, but maybe we could do some kind of commentary or maybe include. I think
if you're putting your own kind of thoughts and stuff on it, being able to talk during the slow parts or whatever. I know that I've seen other podcasters, friends of mine, do that with E3, where they'll put the E3 thing on in the background, but then it's very low volume. They're watching it, they're hearing it at full volume, but when they're recording their thoughts and podcasts and stuff like that, they're getting their opinions. And usually what happens is they'll make all the announcements. It's really cool, and people are listening and just kind of saying, "Oh, that's cool," or "Yeah, I'm really excited about that." And then when they go into like the really dry, ultimately there's always some dry, talk happening at these presentations, and that's when the podcasters tend to get into a little bit more of a discussion.
It's sort of, I don't know, it would almost be the opposite for me this time around, because the thing that I really cared about last time was when Jeb, the creative lead at Mojang, came on to talk about the features for the aquatic update. I was riveted. The rest of it felt like a variety show aimed at kind of kids and their families, and that was the stuff where I kind of tuned it out a little bit, because it's Will Arnett being led around by all of these people, and he's like, "Oh, this wacky world of Minecraft," and I'm like, I can do without that. I'm here for the features. I'm here for the gameplay. But obviously, I'm not necessarily the demographic they're shooting for with all the variety stuff where llamas are being dragged around and stuff.
Yeah, they have to get the information across, but they definitely aim at a younger audience for sure.
Yeah, well, that's Minecraft in a kind of core demographic sense. It's aimed at the young'uns. But
it's hard to forget. It's hard to remember that sometimes. Like there's so many people that are our age that are playing, and so many people that I follow online that are adults. That
all the people we watch on YouTube tend to be kind of like adult age. Yeah, so
give or take, I would say kind of just as a general blanket statement, like over the age of 23 for the most part.
Yeah, So one of the other things I wanted to touch on briefly before we get away from the news is that, following up on our discussion from last week about textures, Jappa, Jasper Burstra has been working on a few more work in progress kind of textures that he started to put out images for basically immediately after our podcast, which I'm not saying we can take credit for this, but I'm totally taking credit for this, right? So he posted a couple of pictures, one of which was of a kind of just a fairly basic cobblestone shack with a wooden roof, and he said there are some work in progress textures here. They're definitely not like what I'm putting in the game. Can you give me some feedback on those? And then just a more natural scene of like a cave with some granite on the surface, some smooth stone, grass and wood and that kind of stuff. And to me, granite is looking a lot better.
Yes, it no longer looks like beans.
Yeah, it doesn't look like beans anymore. Raw granite actually looks kind of cool now. And I think I saw a few other people who I follow on Twitter replying to him saying the same thing. For the life of me, I can't work out why the heck he's still messing with smooth stone. Because to me, smooth stone didn't need changing in the first place. And when he made a subtle change to it for the updated beta texture pack that they released, I thought it still looked okay, but now he's got these slightly more kind of high contrast almost lines in it instead of individual flecks, and to me that it just tiles in a really obvious way that's going to make it look much less natural when you're looking at whole massive walls of it the way you often do in Minecraft. So I'm less convinced by it. But as he said on Twitter, it was an experimental thing. It's not necessarily what he's going with at all, so I imagine a lot of people would have given him a bit more feedback about that themselves. What did you think about these?
So one of the things that I know when he posted the cobblestone shack, with the stone and the
Yeah.
cobblestone and stuff like that, his comment was, sometimes to explore options and things, I try drastic changes like this. So he's
Yeah.
obviously saying like, this is me pushing it too far. I
Yeah.
get it. I know
Hmm.
that it's too far, but what is there anything that you guys like about this? Like, just check it out. One thing that I didn't notice at first, but I've noticed now going back and looking at it is that the bark texture looks way more like bark.
Yeah.
It's way more unique than this kind of like the ribbed kind of look. And if you can like that, if that's not all trees, if that's just the oak, if the oak tree has that kind of bark and then spruce trees have the current kind of bark, and like if that's the case, then hey, like that's a good direction to go. I'm with you. I think the stone decisions were poor. I again, like, he's a work in progress. He's pushing things to extremes and whatever. But yeah, I can't even tell you the difference between the beta textures of smooth stone and the vanilla textures of smooth stone. I would have to see them next to one another to see. It's subtle, whatever it is, because it
Yeah.
really doesn't register as a change. But I cannot, for the life of me, imagine this smooth stone texture with these lines as you described in a mountain.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of it when you're looking at the side of a mountain in
It
Minecraft.
it reminds
It would
me
look
of
terrible.
static on a TV screen somehow. Just this
Yeah.
kind of like
Oh,
bold lines in it.
yeah. You turn it sideways and it looks like rain.
Yeah.
Like, it's that obvious, right? I do really like the granite though, and being in a part of the world where there is very regularly chunks of granite exposed with the continental shelf in Nova Scotia, that looks like granite. Like,
Hmm.
that's awesome. It reminds me of granite countertops that I've seen. Either one of them would work, the raw granite or the smooth granite. With the raw granite, you wouldn't get the lines, like the chiseled lines of the block.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're building a kitchen and you wanted to have like a nice granite countertop, you could totally do it. Like that,
Hmm.
I think that's an excellent direction to go to. It also looks really good next to dirt. It's
Yeah.
it's less it's less of a salmon color now, like it's less pink.
Hmm.
So it does look a little bit closer to dirt. It still registers as stone, but it looks like it could, like, you can imagine. I wish he would put more blocks in context when he does these, because you're like, I'm trying to look at that granite and imagine what it looks like next to Podzol in
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in like a taiga biome. Like, that would be really good. I think that there's a lot of potential there, but I don't know. Textures like this are always so subjective, and I do find it interesting the direction that he goes in sometimes, because sometimes it's just like, wow, really.
Yeah.
I get that he's kind of reaching for things, but it's like sometimes you're like, what made you even want to go there in the first place?
It's kind of interesting seeing the work he's done before, because he, I think, is a fairly traditionally a 2D artist. And so
Hmm.
trying
Yep.
to apply kind of 2D methodology to these things that are going to be textured over voxels, it's all being done in a 3D space. It must
Hmm.
be a bit of a shift in terms of the way you're thinking about things. And you've got to apply a certain amount of lighting to this, whereas with 2D art, you can apply all of the lighting through, different means. This, you've got like the angles of the sun and things to take into account, and like Minecraft blocks having a very specific sort of set of shading. I've
Hmm.
noticed this with some textures. I actually try and build with some blocks facing north-south instead of east-west, because the east-west sides appear darker. And yeah, you've got to think about stuff like that when you're designing stuff for 3D models, that maybe, I don't know, it probably does occur to him, and he's probably having to do a fairly rigorous amount of testing to get that stuff right. But it's taking a while for him to dial it in, I think. Obviously not supposing to understand anything about how he does his work, because I'm not an artist myself, so I'm not really qualified
Yeah.
to critique that kind of stuff. But I
It's
like to
funny,
give my
since
opinion where I can.
our conversation last week, I don't know why, probably just because Google and Facebook track everything that you do online, but I saw an advertisement for pixel art lessons
Hmm.
on Udemy, I think it was, and it was reasonable. It was like, $13 or $14, but it was like 15 or 16 1 hour lessons or 20-minute lessons about pixel art. I didn't pull the trigger on it because when I watched samples of the first lessons, they were going over really basic art stuff that I obviously already know. I think I might need to seek out a more advanced, pixel class where they're not going to necessarily talking about color theory and stuff like that, like I'm fine in that department. It's I need to know a little bit more specific, making textures for games or making textures for voxel art and things like that.
It's like when you're learning a new musical instrument and you're like, okay, beginner's book, I don't need to learn how to read music from scratch. Just tell me where the notes are on the instrument and let me kind of go from there.
From there, yeah. One thing that I was looking at, and when you mentioned tileable, he also posted a picture of some sand that he's working on, and I'm not a fan. I can see where you're coming from, where you say like, he's a 2D pixel artist going into doing stuff in voxels. A lot of the stuff that he's doing tends to tile very obviously, at least at first.
Yeah.
Anything that I've seen in the beta, he's dialed it back and it works. But I kind of I almost wonder the value of sharing stuff work in progress, because I feel like a lot of people are probably not going to really note the WIP in there. Like they might just like, that's terrible. Why are you doing it that way? It's like, I was like, well, maybe, dude, you might not want to post it until you're really close to done. Because I feel like some stuff it kind of makes the faith waver a little bit. You're like, I don't know if that's really the direction you want to go.
Yeah. Hopefully he's using it all to dial it in. I imagine working at Mojang in general, you have to develop a bit of a thick skin because of how opinionated people are about the game. So hopefully he's taking it all in his stride and is, learning stuff along the way when he's experimenting with all of this. So
And speaking of learning, we actually had an email come in regarding our talk about textures last week. And thank you very much to a half stack. He's the person that wrote in. And they said, "Hi, Joel and Pix. Just listened to episode 4 and wanted to give some input ahead of your data pack discussion. I would love to get my hands on a data pack that allows you to give shulker boxes block textures. So instead of using a die in a crafting grid, you could put, for example, a prismarine brick in the grid, and then you would have the prismarine brick textured shulker." So if that makes sense for everybody, instead of dyeing something a color, you'd be essentially dyeing it the texture of the brick. And then you could use that prismarine textured shulker box to then store your prismarine in. Because I like to color code things, and the way that I think half a stack is thinking is that there is no prismarine color in the game. Like even the cyan is really dark, but the prismarine is a very bright turquoise. So if you just had a prismarine colored shulker, then you'd know exactly what would be in it.
My question is, where would you find it? Like, how would you find it afterwards? Because if you're applying the entire prismarine block texture to this thing, you close the box and then suddenly you're like, hey, where'd my shulker box go? Like that was my initial thought. Obviously, if you could have the kind of, I almost think of it as stitching, like the kind of little indentations around the ridges of a shulker box. Like if the outline was still there, it was just like kind of onion skinned over the top of whatever texture you had, then
and that's what I think what you would end up doing is that you would take the shulker box texture as it is, you would drop the color out of it, so you just have the black and white. And shulker boxes have like this little dental pattern around the edges of them, and they have like a very clear like opening, like that you can see where it unscrews and screws back together. And if you had those lines remain, and then just had the texture underneath it, and then you'd have to do that in layers in Photoshop, and then you could export that as a new item in the game, or just say like, oh, if we do this in the game, it'll give you I guess we could call it like a prismarine shulker, if that would be the item, the block in it. And then you'd say, okay, well, that's what that is, and then this is the texture for it. I think it's brilliant. And he goes on to say that this would fall under the quality of life category, and make organization easier without being cheaty. And if any of your technical listeners are inclined, they would receive eternal gratitude and karma. So I think he really wants this data pack. So, I think it's a cool idea, and it's not, from what I understand, like I've not made a data pack yet, but that is not an overly complicated data pack to make.
No, it doesn't seem like it would be. All you have to do is a little bit of texture work, and then, just applying the crafting recipe and telling it to look for that shulker box specifically, and whether that requires, MBT tags and stuff. But there are definitely people who have put fresh new items into Minecraft using data packs without taking anything out, which is what the problem is with resource packs, generally speaking, is that you've always got to retexture an existing item in Minecraft rather than, kind of, for want of a better term, modding in your own.
Right.
Whereas you look at the stuff like they're doing on Hermitcraft now with the terracotta wrench that you can use to, reorient terracotta blocks once you've placed them, glazed terracotta specifically. then that's something new. That's not a retextured carrot on a stick. It's not. If you make a carrot on a stick, you're not going to end up with the same thing. That is literally that item. It's a brand new item that they've put into the game. The same to a certain extent goes for the player heads that they're adding, although those are all in a database somewhere. But yeah, in the meantime, anyone who wants to work on that data pack, go ahead. It would be great. It would be fantastic to even maybe try it out for the show and kind of give our take on that once we were actually using it ourselves. But there are resource packs that do some good stuff with shulker boxes that I've seen.
Really? I'm not familiar. I've never looked into that.
Yeah, in particular, I want to highlight my buddy Germsy Boy. I forget what exactly his YouTube channel is, but we'll try and include it in the show notes. But he has a resource pack that he updates pretty regularly. And I don't think the most recent iteration, like the 1.13 update to his texture pack, has this. But he'd previously retextured shulker boxes so they looked like, I don't know, like an apple crate that you'd put in a medieval town, like outside of a market stall kind of thing. So you'd put down a shulker box, and I think even kind of there was an element of 3D to it, so it would actually only be filled up to about 2/3 of the way, and you'd be able to kind of see inside it. There'd be a kind of dip inside it a little bit. But then it opened up just like a shulker box. You could use it like a shulker box, and you didn't have to store apples in it. But it was an interesting take on that, and allowed you to work in some aesthetic blocks. If you just had some shulker boxes lying around, you could add them to a medieval market scene, and it would look fairly natural. So I do think there are some other packs that have done that. I can't name any off the top of my head, though. But his pack is called A Little Taste of Germ, Jerm, and it might be worth looking into if you're on an earlier version. We will, see if we can get a hold of that. I was trying to look for a video in which he showcased it, but all of the recent update videos he's done for his texture pack, he hasn't really highlighted that as a feature. He's just kind of skimmed over it on the way to something else. So might be worth a look, though.
In that same vein, I was watching a recent Janzi video, and he went into great detail about the note blocks. I don't recall if I mentioned this last week. I don't think I did. It was in the notes, but I don't think we got to it. But the note blocks, depending on what item you put the note block on, depending on what block you put the note block on, it makes a different sound.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 23 notes, including a zero note, 24 notes, including a zero note. But basically, he referred to it as 23 different options. The zero note being the natural note block.
Mm-hmm.
But what he was doing was using MBT tags to say, okay, well, if the note block is on sand, you get, I think it's a chime or a harp or something.
Yeah.
And then you've got 23, versions of that. And so what he did was he said, like, you can have 250 different textures for the note block. And all you have to do is change the note.
Yeah.
So you can basically cycle through.
Yeah, you're kind of right clicking on it, and it's changing the texture as well as emitting this tone. And
which it's adding stuff to the game, but you're also using the information that's provided by the game. So like it does potentially give you blocks that you would otherwise not have. But it also adds the gamification of, well, you might really want to put this, I can't think of what it might be, like a sign or a letter or something custom that you've made, but you have to figure out what block has to go underneath the note block. So you can't just put it anywhere. Like if you're building in a tree and you want the texture that goes with the stone, well, tough luck. Or you have to hide the stone. So like there are some things that kind of make it more than just like, easy mode. Like it adds a little bit more of a challenge to it. So, and again, he's using those in a single player situation, but I thought it was really neat to see that, along with like you said, the Jimsy Boys shulker box thing. Like that's things that I say the shulker box stuff is less of a game workaround and just more of a quality of life thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely fits in well with the texture pack he's been working on. So it's all kind of adding to the vibe a little bit. But all this talk of shulker boxes got me thinking that maybe we should have a big discussion about storage, because storage is definitely, it's not so much a divisive topic in Minecraft, but it's something everybody has their own kind of ideas about, their own opinions on, their own way of doing things. And so I thought it'd be good to break this out into a discussion about storage, because let's face it, there are so many items in Minecraft. There are an awful lot. I tried counting them once and I kind of gave up. Like there's at least sort of, upwards of 500 items, unique items, and probably hundreds more than that, really. So you've got to have some place to keep them all. So I figured, how do we keep track of them all? How do we like to set up our own storage systems? And how on earth did anybody move anything around before shulker boxes were a thing? because I can't even remember playing Minecraft before shulker boxes. I only played for one version before they introduced shulker boxes in Minecraft 1.9. So yeah, I must have just moved everything around in my inventory and then put it in a chest at the location I wanted it, but I can't imagine doing that now. Like, it's something you do for a couple of a week or two maybe before you go and raid the end, but as soon as shulker boxes come in, suddenly you're way more mobile.
I agree. And we played for a long time on the Citadel, having not beat the dragon. So we didn't have shulker boxes for at least 6 months.
How did you live, Joel? How did you live?
We didn't really build outside of walking distance. Like, it was, it would be a pain in the butt. You get down, from the main meadows where we built most of our stuff to like the South Meadows or somewhere else. You'd be just like, oh, I forgot my cobblestone back. And it was a 2-minute walk back to the barn to get it. It's not like I was blocks and blocks and blocks away. Or what you'd end up doing is just filling your inventory with all of the stuff that you think you would need. And if you're going to need a lot of wood, you would just bring a lot of logs so that you can then convert them into all the different things that you want. Or ultimately, if you were far enough away, you would just end up with a site storage. Like, you would just say, all right, well, I don't really feel like walking all the way back. I will just dig up the stuff that I need. Like, I ran out of stone, I'm just going to go dig more. And then you'd end up with a bunch of chests at the build site that are just full of stuff that you needed that you forgot back at the main,
I suppose build, right? I suppose that's what you do, is you bring the really valuable stuff that you can't possibly leave behind, like your tools, maybe like a beacon or something if you've got it. Yeah. But then you just go ahead and harvest all of the resources again from scratch at your new location. Maybe bring a few saplings for trees that aren't around. But
I've done that. I've certainly. I remember when we were building our Guardian farm the server, I was going through wood like crazy because of all the storage that you have to make to keep all the drops. And I was running out of wood like quickly because of all the chests that I had to make and the hoppers, because there's chests in the hoppers, right? So I was just like, you know what? I'm underground and there's nothing else going on. There's enough. All I need to do is just put some dirt down instead of prismarine and plant these trees and just put torches around them and they'll be fine. So I had like a little 5 or 6 unit tree farm going just specifically for chests. Like, as soon as they would grow, I would just break them down and turn them into chests. Like, that's all it was for. But it was faster to do that than it would be to go back, grind out some trees, bring them back. Like, I could build other things while I was waiting for the trees to grow. So for you, do you do like big storage rooms? Do you do one storage room on the server for you, or do you find yourself spreading out?
In theory, I'm one of those guys who likes to have a single dedicated big storage room where everything's got its own chest, it's in its own place, neatly organized and labeled, heavily labeled. But in reality, I find I have chests everywhere, just full of miscellaneous stuff. Like, I've got a storage room for kind of bulk storage, just so I have somewhere to put all of the wood and the cobblestone, because there's always so much. I've run out of room for cobblestone now, and I have like 3 or 4 chests dedicated just to cobblestone. I think some of those even have shulker boxes inside them that are full of 27 more stacks of cobblestone. Wow. And I even get to the point where I end up converting it to stairs and slabs that I just don't need at the time, but I just want to stash them away so that I have another chest full of different items, because I feel like it's all just going to fill up with blocks. And that's just from the amount of strip mining I do, branch mining, and digging out areas to build other stuff. Like the slime farm I dug out, I had to dig out 2 whole chunks, and I wasn't just going to let all of that stuff despawn, because I have plans for projects later where I want to use a lot of stone. But then I've got to do something with all of that in the meantime, because that project is, a month away at this point or more. So I've got to store it all somewhere, and I need the storage room to be in place just so I can sort out all of that stuff. But then I can never quite settle on a system for, not necessarily even like an auto-sorting kind of system, but just like a categorization of where everything should go. Besides putting all of the wood in one place and all of the stone in one place, I always want to experiment with different stuff. Like, am I going to put all of the colored blocks in one place? So right now I've got individual kind of stations which have 6 chests for each color, and I'm putting all of the dyeable items in there. So you have a chest full of dye, a chest full of concrete and concrete powder, terracotta and glazed terracotta, wool, glass, and basically anything else I can think of that you dye that color. But then I feel like even that is limited because there are so many items in the game that I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to end up running out of space there and have to expand that upwards or downwards or backwards. And I really want to do that thing. You know, occasionally you'll find people who have sorted their bookshelves at home, not by alphabetically by author, but by the color of the spine of the book.
Right.
And so it makes for a really nice looking wall. And then you just have to remember a little bit about your books if you want to find them. Because you're like, what color was that again? Was it orange? Was it green? I can't remember. Did it have yellow writing on it? And then how do you choose whether something that's like half yellow and half orange, where does that go? Does it have to straddle the boundary specifically between those two colors? So I want to do something like that where I sort absolutely everything in the game by color. So like apples would go in the red chest along with red dye and redstone and netherwort and spider eyes and stuff like that. And I want to stick to Minecraft's 16 color system for that because there are 16 different colors that you can dye things in Minecraft. But then that starts to fall apart when you've got anything that's got multiple colors, like the spines of these books, or ambiguous color. Like, what color is nether brick? It's maroon, really. And like, does that fall under red? Does that fall under brown? Is it just a really dark magenta? Like, same with prismarine. You were talking about prismarine earlier. It changes color. So, in theory, you can guess maybe by association, you find it underwater, it's mostly blue, but it's also got a little bit of green in there, and there's those pixels that change color between blue and yellow and like a dark kind of purplish color.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to put that one, and I've actually started a shop on Decidedly Vanilla where I sell green stuff. And I'm not certain if I can sell prismarine in there, partly because one of my friends has also opened another prismarine shop, but also I don't really know if I can call it green. And that sort of throws a wrench in my plans to organize everything by color. So, it's all just going to end up in regular chests. And I have build chests everywhere. Like, unless I'm actively trying to build something on the site where that chest is, it's probably not going to get moved. Like, much as I have the best intentions when it comes to storing everything, it's just more convenient to do it that way, I think. And sometimes I've even got shulker boxes lying around, even though they're the easiest things in the world to pick up and move. You don't even have to break them open and have all the items pour out. But yeah, for some reason, I get really disorganized because I have all of these other projects going on. I get distracted from the business of storing everything meticulously by the need to do other projects. How about you? Do you have like an organized storage room on your world?
I have a couple, and some of it stems from what I mentioned earlier about us not getting into shulker boxes until later in the server existence. But I started off with my log cabin and a barn very early on, and everything was inside the cabin for the first couple of weeks because we weren't doing a whole lot. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm starting to craft really important things like enchanting tables and potions and stuff. And I don't like hunting for things. I like being able to find stuff quickly.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing that forces people into some sort of storage system is that they start to realize, like, I just crafted 20 hoppers and I had 30 already in a chest that I couldn't find before. So that it becomes a waste of time and resources.
That's me and furnaces. Always furnaces.
Yes. Oh, furnaces and crafting tables.
It's good to know I'm not the
early
only
game.
one.
Early game, I always have like 7 crafting tables. Like, why do I have 7? So I moved everything out into my barn, and the barn is not big. It is probably inside. It's probably 2, 4, 5, like a 5 by 4 inside. So it's a nice channel to walk down. It's a 2 wide hallway with double chests on either side. And so I've got a double chest full of wood, and I've got a double chest full of stone, and I got And so for me, what I ended up doing was I still go by color a lot of times, but what I do is I go by block subset. So block type. And that's because I think it's because I'm so new to the game compared to a lot of other people out there. When I first set up this barn, I had been playing for 3 months. So I just thought, okay, all my wood goes in this one. And then all my stone and, cobble, smooth stone, dirt, like the stuff that you just get a lot of, that'll go in this other one.
Yeah.
And then special things like stone bricks and stone stairs and slabs and all that other stuff. The crafted things would go in another double chest. Sand and glass would go in the same chest because that's how you make glass.
Yeah.
And then same thing with concrete powder. And so, but once you get into those colors, once you open up that chest, everything is organized by color. So it goes, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, etc. and it just depends on how much room I have in that chest. I get frustrated with the fact that the chests are 9 wide in terms of the inventory, yet everything in Minecraft is multiples of 8.
Yes.
So it's like, what do I do with the extra space? So so I get a little bit, frustrated with that. I think the best solution I've come up with is my wood box. So my wood box is it's got the 4 different types, or no, 5 different types of wood.
6.
I think there's 6. So it's got all 6 different types of wood, and there's 4 slots for logs, and then there's just sticks down the middle.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of those sticks is 4 slots of stacks for planks. So that it turned into a mini game early in the server where I'm just like, I'm going to get 64 of everything in this chest just to take a screenshot. After that, I don't care. But just for now, I'm just going to, every morning I was logging in and using our tree farm and just kind of like bolstering this chest of wood just to say that I had it. So that's my main storage on, in the Dartmouth Meadows area of the Sigil server. Now I've got plenty of builds where I did a really big nether build. I did a couple of big digs in the nether. Like we did a wither farm, we did a blaze farm. So I've got 15, 16, 20 double chests of netherrack that are just stuck by the build. There's just so much of it. Now, why I kept it, I couldn't tell you.
Because we're hoarders. That's the thing.
Like, a bit of a digital hoarder. Yeah. And it came in real handy when I wanted to build that wither farm and I needed nether brick. Like I would just go get like as much as I could carry from my dig, from my blaze farm dig, and just smelt it into nether brick. So like that kind of stuff worked out really well. Yeah. But a lot of times it's just a matter of, because there's not so many people on the server and there's a lot of community builds, a lot of times the stuff that you would have a lot of, the storage is actually at the farm. So like if you want pumpkins or cactus, you go to the cactus farm to get it. I don't necessarily store more than like a stack, for me to use locally. If you need lots and lots of the stuff, like if you need to smelt up a lot of cactus green, you go specifically, you make a trip to the cactus farm, you get the stuff you need and you bring it back. And I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. Like I kind of enjoy that kind of, I get to walk to the cactus farm again. I've not been over there in a while. Like you get to, see the world that you've been building. Since then, however, two major things have happened. We've killed the dragon, so we have access to shulker boxes. And I also had a very big project in clearing the swamp for the witch farm. So for that, the witch farm, I had to build a automated bulk storage.
Yeah.
Best decision I ever made.
It always is.
For things, but it's not like I'm storing every item in the game. This is not some crazy Tango Tech, item elevator monster. It's a real simple, it's got a water stream taking items across the top of hoppers. And there's, I don't know how many chests are in it. I'll put a screenshot in the show notes, but like there are walls of 5 high by 7 long, double chests. And like half a wall is dirt, half a wall is grass, half a wall is cobble, half a wall is smooth stone. And then once you get around to the end, then it's like, a column for granite, a column for diorite, a column for andesite.
Yeah, the stuff you're going to get less.
That you get when all the stuff that you're getting just reams of when you're mining, stuff that you just don't want. And then the overflow chest that doesn't have a filter on it just gets all your lapis and your gold and your diamonds and your, so you can just go back over to your item elevator and just like dump all of your inventory in, and it just goes back up to where you want it to go. Heartbreaking if the elevator doesn't work, by the way. I've had that happen before. But that to me is really kind of sorted out that problem. So I no longer have those things cluttering up my main storage spots. Where I want to go build something, I'm not cycling through chests and chests and chests of cobble or whatever to try to find the things that I want. I will keep 3 or 4 stacks of cobble handy, but if I want a lot of it, I have to go someplace else to get it. The other thing that I've done, and I don't know where I got this idea. I'm sure probably from just watching videos like Hermitcraft, but I have an ender chest now that has 15 shulker boxes in it. And that just comes with me wherever I go.
Yeah.
And every box is color coded. It's dyed the way that I want. And it's not all storage. So some of it is precious items like your current tools, your armor in case you get into a fight, you need to switch, stuff like that. Backup, armor in case you die.
And sometimes currency as well. Like if you're going around shops on a server, if you've got one, then
yes, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if you want to keep your diamonds in there just in case, that sort of stuff. And then also it's got things like potions. So like if you're doing a lot of underwater building in 1.13 and you want a lot of water breathing potions, it's nice to have a shulker box full of them on you. But the rest of those boxes are all utility. So it's like red is a redstone box. The green one is a tree box. Now, that's not full of logs. That's full of pre-made, like it's a stack of logs, a stack of planks, a stack of stairs. So it's so nice when you're building something. You're like, I wonder what jungle wood would look like right there. And instead of going, ugh, my jungle wood is back at my cabin, you go, oh, let's find out. And you just, you grab your wood box and you take out some jungle wood stairs and you go, oh, that's what it looks like. That's terrible. We'll put that back, And so it helps in the speed of being able to kind of like freestyle a little bit while you're playing. And I've never looked back. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't have a giant sorting system that sorts a lot of stuff in the game, is that our Nether hub kind of connects various builds where I've got a good chunk of stuff. And then the shulker boxes take care of all my immediate needs. And then just every once in a while, when you revisit, say like I'm back at the barn and I remember, oh, you know what? The last time I was down in the South Meadows, I was building that bridge and I was running real low on spruce logs because I was doing all the framing in spruce logs. So I'll go to my wood chest and I'll say, okay, well, I'll replenish my wood box so that my tree box in my nether, in my ender chest has got a full stack of everything that was in there. And when I go to do that, usually I'm like, oh wow, I'm really low. Like I only had 8 stairs in this type and I only had like 3 fences in that type. So it's once you kind of get into the habit of restocking it, then I find that it's a lot easier than building a giant redstone thing. I had a redstone sorting system on my single player world when I first started playing the game, and I quickly discovered that I didn't use it.
Yeah.
I ended up putting stuff away manually just because it took too long for the thing to put stuff away. So I was just like,
getting over the kind of speed of hoppers transferring stuff and everything being bottlenecked behind one hopper to begin with is always a little bit difficult to get past. So yeah.
Well, and that's something I'm curious about. So for any of our technical listeners, because of the speed of item transport now in 1.13, like I really think that that's going to change the way that some of these automated systems work. Like people would shy away from the water because of how bad water and redstone tend to be together. One wrong move and you've just destroyed an hour's work. But man, like if you can harness the power of water to move your items along, it changes everything. You don't need to have packed ice. Like you just hoppers and water and stuff flies.
Yeah, and people used to use water streams as kind of like a lag busting kind of feature because transferring everything around via hoppers would create a lot of lag with the hoppers updating as items went through them. But considering how laggy flowing water is in this update, I don't know if that's necessarily an option anymore, or at least in terms of using it specifically to combat lag. In terms of actually transporting the items around, I'd say there's nothing better. I've recently been getting into like the mechanics behind stuff like hopper minecarts, because hopper minecarts transfer stuff way faster than hoppers do. But it's only an intake kind of thing. And then when you have to take it out of a hopper minecart, then they don't just naturally put stuff in a chest below them. You have to use a hopper for that. And the best way of getting stuff out of a hopper minecart is to put it kind of in between 4 hoppers that are all kind of in a square, and then each one of the hoppers, because you can place a hopper minecart because it's an entity, you can kind of put it on the corner of each one of them, and they each drag out an item at once. So you've got 4 items leaving it instead of 1. But then that still, the hoppers then still have to transfer stuff into whatever other system you've got going on. So again, hoppers become the bottleneck. It's really interesting though. There's a lot of mechanics you can play with once you're beyond just basic, like, here's a hopper, it puts stuff into a chest, that there's some stuff out there.
I think that flowing water as opposed to updating water, like for example, my witch farm will cause some lag because the water is being turned on off and on and off. Whereas I don't really feel like I get a lot of lag from my storage system because the one that I have in the swamp, because that is just a bunch of water streams. And now even there's fewer dispensers. Like there's one dispenser way down in the mine, and there's one dispenser up on the surface just for like that manual time where you've got a stack of cobble that you don't want to put away. And you toss it in the chest and you just let it do its thing. But outside of those, there's no real updating happening. Yeah. It's just a matter of those blocks hitting the surface. Something else that I've noticed, I haven't tested it because my storage system was built before items floated on top of water. So I do have packed ice in there in certain spots. The reason for that is because you had to speed up the item enough that it would get over the hoppers. Otherwise it would hang.
Yeah.
and items would also get hung on the edge of the lip of hoppers. Like they would sink down like a pixel into the hoppers and get stuck, similar to how XP orbs do. We were discussing this in our Discord earlier this week. And with the new way that items float on the surface of water, hoppers will still suck them down through the water, but they don't get hung up.
Yeah.
So you don't need to have like the chest or the cake or the thing to push the item up against the very edge. So my water stream snakes around a bunch to get the items up against the wall, and it doesn't have to anymore. Not that I'm going to necessarily change all that, but in future water streams, I don't necessarily have to make sure that the items get up against like the left or right side of the hopper. I can just send them down the middle and everything's going to be fine.
Water stream's definitely the way to go for sure. And I aspire to be one of those guys who has a storage system where everything just gets dumped into a double chest and streams kind of auto-sort it into a larger storage room. But I'm always in such a rush to set up a large storage room in the first place, and not being much of a technical guy, I never build with that kind of stuff in mind. I'm always like, let's get something together and let's get it looking vaguely nice. Let's worry about the aesthetics of it, but never, I need to leave a bit of space behind these chests so I can put all of the redstone behind it. So inevitably I end up with a big manually sorted storage room instead of having an auto sorting kind of thing. So maybe I'll end up reworking my storage room later on in the lifetime of this server and see if I can get something more automated. It's the same way I aspire to be a guy with an auto smelter where you've got like, reams of furnaces and minecarts going around and distributing all of the stuff you need to smelt so it all comes out super fast.
I've got one of those. It's not a big one. It's only an 8 furnace array, but it's nice for the length of time that it takes to smelt 8 blocks. You end up with a stack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is cool, especially when you put it somewhere smart. Like, it's in the Nether, so I would like to have a bigger one in the overworld, but in the Nether, it's very close to the Nether hub. So basically, as people are coming and going, the thing is just always smelting.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah. And if you put something like that at spawn, or if you put it in the Nether, you've also got easy access to the best fuel in the game, which is buckets of lava. So yeah, you can smelt 100 items with a bucket of lava. It's kind of useful. So yeah, I need to get my automated smelting on. I'm going to put it near the rest of my farms in Pixel Co, where I've got my kind of melon and pumpkin farms and my cactus farm and everything. So I'm always loading in that area of the island because I'm usually doing work around there. So
nice.
It means that I can spend a lot of time around those furnaces. In fact, thinking of Pixel Co, it's the first time I've looked into using shulker boxes for automation purposes, because before, like I've used them since they were implemented for easily transported storage, but they've also got mechanics that relate to redstone components. So when you push them with a piston, they will break and turn into the shulker box item that can then be, ferried around by a water stream and stored in a chest. And you can dispense them using dispensers, and it will actually place the shulker box in the same way that they place things like pumpkins and a few other things the same way they'll place like a bucket of water. So you can use that. You can use those mechanics to actually automate storage. And I've got it collecting all of my melons so that instead of just depositing them in a chest and then the chest getting full, once a shulker box gets full up, that's detected by a redstone comparator. A piston breaks the shulker box, it drops into a water stream, and then a dispenser places another shulker box in place, and it carries on filling those up. So effectively, I'm saving on the amount of storage space in this chest by putting all of the melons compacted into shulker boxes first. And that's the first kind of step, really, in working out how to make storage much more efficient and having it interact with redstone. And I don't know if I could do an entire storage system that way, because for a start, it means getting yourself a whole lot of shulker boxes.
The bottleneck there is the shulker boxes. Do you remember Cub Fan's storage system last year for Hermitcraft Season 5?
Yeah, where he had it in the villager trading hall, and it was just all in the roof.
There was a villager trading hall. That was all farm stuff. So that was all tradables.
Yeah.
But he had a teeny tiny little 5x7 block storage system, and it was a shulker box storage system, and I can't remember how many million items or something that you could store.
Oh yeah, you just kind of load them in and
bananas.
Yeah.
I still don't necessarily understand how you call forward the one that you want. That was the thing that was confusing to me. And I've watched the tutorial, and he knows his stuff, but it is fascinating and absolutely a bucket list thing that I want to do is create a shulker box storage system. And that would have been a much more efficient way to do my, my bulk storage, like for your stone and your grass and your dirt and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. If you have the shulker boxes, that's the only thing. Now, I guess we should note that Hermitcraft has a special data pack that every shulker that they kill drops 2 shulker shells.
Yeah, same with Decidedly Vanilla, actually. That's kind of one of the things we've
been thinking about that on the Citadel. We haven't implemented it yet just because we haven't explored the end and we don't have that many players. But if one of us was to want to do a big shulker system like that, I would say, yeah, let's just implement that. Because otherwise, that's just a pain. Like, you just, we've beaten the dragon. We've done a lot of end city clearing. It's not like we don't know how, or it's something that's, making life easier for us. It's more along the lines of like, well, how much time do you want to spend grinding, to get these things versus just, having the fun of learning how to make that system would be a lot better if you just had access to extra shulker shells.
Yeah. And there are even other storage options that we haven't even considered. And when I was talking about not being able to move anything around without shulker boxes before, I thought about halfway through whatever we were talking about after that, wait a minute, horses can have chests on them. Like you can tame a horse and have chests as saddlebags, but horses just kind of fell out of use, especially when Elytra got introduced, but that was at the same time as shulker boxes, so that it kind of simultaneously made horses and horses with chests obsolete. But also, I never really saw people making much use of horses because they were always a little bit glitchy. They were kind of hard to control. If you end up going through a forest, then you have to find a path that you're not going to like bang your head on all the leaf blocks and not be able to get through. They were a little bit awkward. And so while obviously you could saddle up a horse or a donkey or a mule or whatever you had, and even llamas in more recent updates, even though that was post shulker box revolution anyway, you can still use them to transport stuff. And I wonder, maybe if we'd never seen shulker boxes turn up, maybe people would be using horses to transport stuff a little bit more. I still think it's a lot faster to just carry inventories full of stuff through the nether, but there you go.
Yeah.
There are also...
the other thing too is early game, sometimes wood can be hard to come by. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some people use droppers. Because they're super easy to make. And you get, was it 5? I think you get 5 slots of storage.
You get 9, so you can, in theory, store 9 stacks of items in a dropper or a dispenser, and all you need is
that's right.
7 cobblestone and a piece of redstone is all you need.
Hoppers have got 5, but droppers, and because dispensers are the ones that need bows, but droppers are just like a piece of redstone and cobble, right? Like there's nothing to them.
Yeah. And storage minecarts are the other thing that I want to use more of, because again, watching Hermitcraft, Iskal85 has a storage system that uses hopper minecarts to, again, store shulker boxes of stuff inside of them. But it looks really neat because the chests are smaller and they're in this kind of little tray that's the minecart. And in theory, because of minecarts being entities, you can store a whole bunch of them in a single space. And you can have literally millions of items just sat there only occupying a single block because all of the minecarts can be in the same space together. I don't know if entity gramming starts to take effect, but I don't think it would. But even then, you can have, like, by default, 24 minecarts in one space, possibly even more. And all you need to do is break the top one and then carry on using the rest of them and maybe just reassemble the storage minecart later. But he's using that for bulk storage of all of his stone and stuff that he's gathered in his kind of large-scale mining project.
My only reservation there is that I don't trust entities in Minecraft. Yeah. Like that kind of stuff can be a little bit glitchy. And I've used entity cramming, and entity cramming and minecart entities does take effect. So, for example, my gold farm uses 24 minecarts to kill pigmen. Pigmen being the 25th item or entity that comes into that space. The other thing that I would find really annoying in my base is that sometimes when one of those entities gets nudged, they'll go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth along the track. Yeah. And it makes a crazy noise. So that's some of the problems. And that can happen not by touching them, but by logging in and out in that chunk or a series of chunks. That can be a little bit complicated. But I've seen that build as well, that kind of like millions of items in that one block space. It's cool, but I'm not really sure. What I'd like to see is a way. You mentioned it earlier in terms of how hopper minecarts suck items out like super fast. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wish there was a way that there was also a hopper minecart with an export of that speed.
Or if they interacted with minecart chests that way, perhaps.
Something
to open it up a little bit.
Yeah, put a minecart chest under a minecart hopper and have it just like suck stuff out that quickly. Because I feel like that would be an excellent way to handle your bulk storage. Like, I mean, just I need 12 stacks of cobble for this build, and you just kind of stick. It's almost like sticking your tray underneath like the soft serve ice cream, just like just like or the ice machine. It just kind of like spits out all the stuff, then you're good to go. You taking care of that way.
That would be awesome. Well, I think we've probably run out of time for this discussion, but it would be great to see other people's storage systems. So, of course, you can tweet them at us or send them to us via the email address. But that is going to wrap up another episode of The Spawn Chunks. So you can find more information about the show and links to some of the things we talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and I'm not going to make any promises this week. I feel like it's sticking for me at this stage. If anything comes up, I actually tried making a bit more music this weekend, and it didn't come out like a theme song to anything, but I'm dabbling again. So maybe it'll change, maybe it won't, but no promises from now on, I think. In the meantime, if you're getting a little bit of value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back into the show and supporting us on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community, where pledging at any level will get you an invite to the patrons-only Discord chat, and I hope we will see a few people's storage systems posted in there this week.
And we have some very technical people in the Discord chat. So if you need help with your storage system, then you could post an image of your very sad storage and be like, help me, help me make this better.
Make this better.
If nothing else, I'm sure people could refer you to some simple YouTube tutorials about how to get a basic storage system up and running, or how filters work. I think is an excellent way to start.
We've got a vast hive mind building. I like it a lot.
Yeah, me as well. Speaking of the Spawn Chunks Patreon, I wanted to make a quick note about how this is all working. Thank you to everybody for supporting us on the show. We've kind of completed our first month of episodes, and there were some questions in the Discord about how this all rolls out, and we have it set up on a per podcast basis. So if you decide to join the community for $1, then it's $1 or more per creation, depending on how you set up your Patreon. And so what that means is if we have 4 shows that month, then you'd be supporting us with $4. We currently have 8 patrons, and we're looking at $10 per creation, which is fantastic for the first month of the show. I'm really happy with that.
Is this show a month old already? That's so weird.
It's crazy, right?
This young show, it's getting legs. Oh, it's so good.
And people often wonder, like, hey, well, why isn't this per month as opposed to, like, why isn't it per month instead of per show? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. One, when you're doing weekly content, it's easier to do on a per creation or per podcast basis. 2, if something comes up, like say Monday falls on a holiday where, Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, or travel where, Pixlriffs or I can't make the show, then we only make 3 episodes that month and you only pay for 3 episodes that month, as opposed to if it was monthly, and then there would just be this expectation of getting those 4 shows. So this way it's a little bit more flexible. It's also, to flag Pixlriffs Patreon, which I would highly encourage everybody to check out. You post more than one thing a week, and it's a combination of like videos and tutorials and let's plays, and so it's a lot for you. Monthly makes more sense, right? Because it's not just a once a week bang.
And I pour out as much content as I can in a month. So it would be very difficult for people to keep track of that if I was, suddenly making 30 videos in a month where I'd previously only been making 15. Suddenly people are paying twice as much when they don't want to. Precisely. It gets a little bit hectic. Yeah.
So with the Spawn Chunks being predictable, that's why we have it on a
we're predictable. That's what we are.
if not anything else. But what that means is that that money then comes out at the beginning of every month. So Patreon will charge your account, whether it's PayPal or credit card or whatever, at the beginning. So if you're not seeing you don't see incremental charges every week that we make a show. It just kind of tallies how many shows we did for the month and does a one-time charge. So because we had some questions, I wanted to address that. We won't talk about it every show. I just wanted to kind of get that out there. But while you're out there talking about Patreon and talking about the show, that's actually one of the best ways for the show to get new listeners, and that's just word of mouth, whether that's sharing it on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or poking a friend in the arm and saying, hey, I like this podcast. You should listen to it too, because I know that you and possibly even your kids are, into Minecraft. So you can follow us at The Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram. You can send us information. You can send us replies and thoughts about the episode episodes. You can also use that to share the show quite easily, because all of our social media links back to the website and onward to ways that people can listen to the show. You can also email the show directly, just like a few stacks did earlier in the episode, and that is at thespawnchunks@gmail.com. And we are available on iTunes, Google Play, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher, including the RSS feed that is linked on spawnchunks.com. And another RSS feed is on the Patreon page for our patrons.
My name is Johnny. Online, I go by Pixlriffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixlriffs, where I have a Minecraft survival guide series for beginners and a multiplayer Let's Play series called Decidedly Vanilla, where you can comment about how bad my storage is. I'm also the voice for the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where these days I'm mostly working on larger Minecraft projects for my YouTube series, but I play other games from time to time. And this week we actually checked out Graveyard Keeper, which was a lot of fun, kind of a morbid take on the kind of Stardew Valley style management sim. That was a lot of fun. Aside from that, I'm Pixlriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. And I should also point out that this week, speaking of travel plans, I am actually going on a brief trip up north to see my parents. So next week's episode of the Spawn Chunks is going to be delayed by my absence. We'll probably be putting it out at the earliest on Tuesday, maybe even on Wednesday. But hopefully we will get to make a show at some point next week. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I am doing online can be found at joelduggan.com. That includes links to my illustration and design portfolios. If you are interested in hiring me, I am taking commissions. I am going to be doing a lot of new artwork in the next month or so. I'm going to be at HalCon, which is a big comic and sci-fi convention here in Halifax at the end of October. So I'm going to be preparing for that. If you're going to be in town, let me know, because it would be great to meet people, especially if you're listening to the Spawn Chunks. Speaking of listening, you can also check out The Citadel Cafe or Comics Coast to Coast. They are two of the other podcasts that I am working on. And I was a guest on the Mac Observer Daily Observations podcast. I have that linked on my Instagram, which is just my name. It's a short interview. It's only about 20 minutes, but it's a little bit of insight into some of the behind the scenes baseball in podcasting and the art that I make. So that's just easy to find. Joel Duggan across all social media. And just, if you can't find something, just ask me. I'll be happy to point you in the right direction.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, but sadly, the storage space is finite.